Welcome back to Two Average Husbands, where a few husbands have a few beers and have a few conversations. My name is Jake, and I am one of your hosts this evening. I'm going to keep trying different intros every week,
that was
Kyle.
a good one. That might have been a little better than the last one.
I think so, yeah. I was still pretty sick during last week's episode, so I was struggling a little bit.
Well, I'll introduce myself then, too. We are the Two Average Husbands, bringing you those topics, as Jake said. I am Kyle, your other host. You can follow us on our social medias there, as listed on the screen for those watching on YouTube. So you got @JakePerry34 and @Kyle and her son, as well as the Two Average Husbands accounts all across the board. You can find our link tree connected to all our social medias as well. So number 2 AVG Husbands on most platforms, but you can also find us on Facebook, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, which is the same thing as iTunes that I just realized after I said that. But anyway, you can find us all over the place. That brings me to one thing that we have to say before we get into this, and that is we are trying desperately right now to still get those retweets to try to get the free package from Michelob Ultra. Jake did the groundwork and reached out to those guys, and they said if we get 250 retweets, they're going to send us some stuff. So we're trying to get that done. We have like 80-ish retweets already, so
give or
we're
take.
getting there, making some good progress. We just need everybody to keep retweeting that so we can get to that 250 mark and get a package from Ultra.
Also, I don't know if this is cheating. I don't know if it's breaking the rules or not. They didn't clarify, so I'm going to tell you to do it anyway. A retweet and a quote tweet both count towards the total, at least from what I can tell. So feel free to hit us with both. I think we might have the final spot of our feature for the episode joining here in just a second. I don't know if your buddy's going to get in here in time.
Ooh, he's going to be mad. He downloaded the app.
I actually might have a way around that.
Joined.
I don't think, no. I know the guys who joined, and so there's one spot left. So you tell your buddy to hurry up a few minutes. But that goes into what we are doing tonight. As you can see from the title of the episode, tomorrow is our host Kyle's birthday. So happy birthday, Kyle. Happy early birthday.
Thank you.
And for your birthday, what are we drinking?
What am I drinking? You guessed it. Michelob Ultra. Because we're trying to get the retweets in order to get the free packs from Michelob Ultra. Also, it's my birthday. I love Michelob Ultra. It's my number 1 light beer. So I'm going to go ahead and enjoy some light beer in favor of draft season, my birthday, and trying to get the retweets from Ultra. So Ultra, this one's to you. Not sponsored, just a fan. But we want to be sponsored. So hit us up. Give us the free stuff. Everybody hit those retweets. Jake, what are you drinking?
Definitely. I am drinking something very different. I have Hailstorm Brewing's Nilla Fluffer Nanner Nutter.
That sounds good.
It's an imperial milk stout brewed with vanilla, marshmallow, peanut butter, and banana. And I love me a peanut butter and banana sandwich. Not a huge marshmallow fan, but I've liked most marshmallow flavored stouts that I've tried. And we all know how much I love vanilla and stouts. So I'm excited. I'm going to spite Kyle this week. He normally makes fun of me for not drinking out of a fancy glass. So just to spite him, because it is his birthday and I have to a little bit, I'm drinking out of this ceramic koozie.
All right. Well, that's fine. I still put mine in a glass despite the fact that it's an Ultra. For anybody that's out there listening, you can follow us throughout the draft on Sleeper as well. Jake, I think you can post that link now that the draft is full.
Yes, give me
if I'm
1
completely
second.
wrong, let me know. Otherwise, Jake can post that link so you guys can follow along on the app as we're drafting and talking through that. And Jake will also probably share his screen so you can see the board on our YouTube channel as well.
So,
and on that note, for those that are in the draft that haven't chimed in either in the chat on there or in here yet, you can follow or open up the YouTube channel as we're drafting and see the comments and comment in live too to discuss with us as we're drafting. So thanks everybody that joined in on the draft. Super happy that we got the draft full to do this mock draft for the final draft of draft season. So for those that don't know, NFL season is starting very, very soon now. Not this weekend, but next weekend. And so this is really kind of the crunch time for everybody to start wrapping up their drafts. And for the draft tonight, I elected to take the number 3 position because in my final draft of this year, it's a redraft league, single quarterback. I'm going to be taking my draft from the 3rd position, so I wanted to get a little bit of last-minute practice here with the guys. And when you do the automated drafts, for those that don't know, if you can't include the human element in a mock draft, it just really can't even come close to predicting what that draft's going to look like. And obviously different people are going to make the difference there too, but the big thing is I think adding the human element into a draft makes it a lot more realistic. So I wanted to get everybody together so we can do this as well. So excited to do it. Thanks for everybody for joining us in. Jake, where are you drafting, and tell us why you picked it.
Yeah, so I picked the 5 spot. Why did I pick it? I don't know. It was just the first spot that I clicked on. I do, as we kind of talked about in last week's episode, I do like picking from the 3. I do like picking from the 5. So it's, either spot's going to be good. But, I just decided to pick from the 5. As we kind of talked about last week a little bit, I think the 5's a good spot, especially in one quarterback leagues, because you can kind of attack some knee positions early on. But like Kyle said, this is a mock draft to kind of mimic the work draft that he has coming up. It's definitely not my last draft. I'm not in that league. I've got at least 2 more drafts and maybe a third more because we're talking about doing a work league as well. So definitely got a few drafts coming up. I haven't done really any one quarterback drafts this year besides our ESPN league, which is sadly still one quarterback. So it'll be nice to do some drafting from some of the other positions. So that's definitely something that I'm a little excited to do. I grew up doing one quarterback leagues, and so it's a little nostalgic anytime that I actually get to do these style of drafts.
I actually really like doing, now that I'm invested in quite a few different leagues, not number of leagues that Jake's invested in for sure, but I'm in enough now that I'm kind of dabbling into a lot of different drafts or league styles. So whether it be IDP or Superflex or whatever, your traditional redraft with a single quarterback. And I think it's fun to do all of them. I do think it's a lot of fun to try to get into all different types of leagues. So like you said, the classic single quarterback redraft is maybe not the most sexy league to be involved in.
Definitely,
but it's still a ton of fun, and the strategies are different, the drafts are different, and it's fun just to kind of get out there and even if you're just mock drafting and have a little bit of fun and see what that's like too. So excited to do this, and I have absolutely no problem doing a single quarterback redraft league. I think it's still fun. So
the only league that I will not play anymore is I cannot do standard scoring. I need some form of PPR. I just can't. I get the argument for standard scoring, but my brain is so ingrained in PPR at this point. Exclusively full PPR, even half PPR leagues, there is enough of a difference that my brain has to kick in a little bit, just to value a few players a little bit differently. But overall, I just don't really enjoy standard leagues all that much. And it is what it is. Some people love them. Not going to knock you for playing it. I'll never knock anybody for their preferred style of fantasy football. I saw a league drafting today where you get the quarterbacks get bonus points for incompletions, interceptions, getting sacked. So there's so many creative leagues out there, and obviously do whatever makes you happy. But standard scoring is not what I prefer, to say the least. But
yeah, that's fine. How do you feel about, while we're waiting the last couple minutes to start this one, how do you feel about 6-point QB touchdowns?
I'm fine with it. It definitely balances out the quarterback value a little bit, because I do think it makes the rushing upside of a quarterback a little less important. But it can also, if they are an extreme rusher, so where it helps guys are the runners, the guys who have a little rushing upside but not a ton. So your Ryan Tannehill, your Justin Herbert, it helps Mahomes from a passing side and a rushing side. But his style of rusher, a guy who's not pushing 6, 7, 8, 900, 1,000 rushing yards from the quarterback position, but a guy who is going to run for 200 or 300 yards. He's going to get into the end zone a few times. It makes them a little bit more valuable because their rushing isn't as important, and it makes guys like Matt Ryan. I'm trying to think about Ben Roethlisberger, Brady, more of your traditional statue quarterbacks. It makes them a little more valuable too. So I think it balances quarterback value a little bit.
Yeah, I did it this year in my work league with all my work friends because I haven't done it. So I wanted to try it out. I've heard a lot of people talking about it this year leading up to the season, and I'm excited to give it a try because I think the justifications that I've heard for it have been legitimate, and I think it's going to add a little bit of a strategy twist element to the quarterback position as well, and thinking about who's going to be throwing more touchdowns versus, like you said, the rushing yards and everything too. So there's a little bit of a different factor there. Makes those throwing quarterbacks a little bit more valuable than they would be in a traditional standard scoring league. So excited to check it out. I'm glad I added that into one league as well. So I'll be able to report back throughout the season and let you know how I feel about it.
All right, everybody, without further ado, Let's start the draft with our buddy Roto Burner starting it off. Make sure you, anybody who is in the draft right now, I'll see if they're cool with it. I'll get their ats. Make sure you give them all a follow on Twitter. I will post the entire draft board afterwards. But let's get started.
On the clock, Christian McCaffrey at the 101.
No shock whatsoever.
No shock.
Absolutely who I would be going with at the 101. You can make arguments for other players, but just imagine it's Christian McCaffrey. If he's healthy, he is going to finish as the running back one.
Yep, he's the 101 in almost every single draft that I've been in, except for Superflex, with some quarterbacks going off the board early, and mostly that's in Dynasty too, not in a redraft Superflex.
You also had that one league that auto drafted where you got McCaffrey at the 3.
Yeah, that was just a sleeper mock draft computer generated. Like I said, you can't, once you take the human element out of it, it just gets silly. Like, nobody's taking CMC not in the first 2 picks. Like, you're not going to have CMC fall to the 3rd pick. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I have I'm not gonna say never, because I have seen some crazy home league drafts recently. We had a guy in the league that we do with Ryan Noli Boli on the board here. They took Gronk in the 3rd, and Jake Trowbridge, who's another fantasy analyst, that also happened in his home league. And to make matters worse, somebody in the next round of that league took Amir Abdullah. So, a little weird.
It is weird.
But, it is what it is. Some people like to draft their team the way they do for some reason. I wish I was in leagues with more people like that. Make this whole fantasy thing a lot easier. But it gets to me at the 105 here. After McCaffrey went Cook, Kamara, and Henry. So for myself here, I'm going to chase what I perceive as the upside here. I'm going to take Zeke. Zeke is in probably my top 6 or 7 in PPR redraft leagues here. The volume's going to be there no matter what, and that's what I think gives him the edge for me. I think Saquon has a higher ceiling, and Saquon has higher league-winning ability if he plays a full season with like traditional workload, but I don't know if we're necessarily going to see that. And I think that there's a good chance that Zeke and Saquon finish near each other.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I'm actually really high on Zeke this year. I think he's going to be solid, and I think people are underestimating him. So I think you taking him at the 5 position is realistically where people should be taking him, but in most of the leagues that I've seen and or mock drafts that I've done, he's going more towards like the 7-8 position, which is good for the people drafting at that position, honestly, in my opinion. I think you're getting a little bit of a bargain there. I don't think Zeke is going to struggle this season. He's looked great. If you watched Hard Knocks, it was dope. Happy to see it. It was exciting, and I think it was he looked really good there too. So
Ryan ended up auto-drafting here. He's kind of joining us while he's at work, so he might auto a few picks here. But Lobo follows him up with Jonathan Taylor, absolutely who I would pick in the same spot. Make sure you follow Lobo on Twitter, Lobos FF Den. He's a fella Arizonan, so kind of near Kyle there. So he's a good dude. He's got a lot of great analysis. I love his pick there. Aiden follows up with Eckler at the 108. Aaron Jones is followed up by Nubs at the 109. This is going, I think, a lot how your league will, which is kind of what we're hoping for here.
Yes, it's actually kind of interesting too, because if looking at this now, this is different than any of the mock drafts that I've done, like completely different, which is actually pretty great to see a different side of it. Tyreek Hill at the 11 position, Chubb at the 10, and then we get Mahomes going off the board at the 12. He probably made that decision based on the fact that we're doing the 6-point touchdown scoring for the quarterbacks, so don't blame him there. Like the pick, and then Travis Kelce, of course, going in the 201. No surprise there either. Yeah,
it's hard to pass up that Mahomes-Kelce stack. Tyreek going at the 111, that's about where I expect him to go. Chubb coming off the board as the running back 10 also makes a lot of sense to me. In PPR, in standard formats, Chubb is probably your 5 or 6, maybe. He loses a little bit of value in the PPR just because he doesn't get the same passing work that some of these other guys do. But yeah, in 6-point passing touchdown, I don't hate Mahomes right off the rip, especially when there's a running back run like this. I don't hate as much as I don't love like zero running back draft strategies. Like if there's a run of running backs, or if there's a run of any position in your fantasy drafts, I'm a huge advocate for pivoting. going, targeting a
You don't
position
want to
that
reach. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not reaching for a guy that I don't value the same. I'll take Mahomes and Kelsey and know that I already, running back itself is a premium position. Obviously, all of these positions are premium positions in fantasy if you have, an extreme advantage there. But Kelsey, you're getting one of the top 3 players at the position, and he was, essentially wide receiver 4 as well. And, so just to create that mismatch early on, it's hard to pass up.
After Kelsey, we had Najee Harris off the board at the 202. Not shocked there that he went running back, and I'm not shocked that he went Najee. I think Najee's a great pick, and I think he's going to be a workhorse back this year.
That's the only reason I lean him typically over Gibby in redraft is just because he's going to be in line for nearly 300 touches this year, and that's hard to pass up, whereas Gibby's going to still split carries a little bit.
Yep.
Split touches, I should say.
We saw Gibson, Adams, Waller. I'm a little surprised with the 205. I don't mind the pick at all. Mostly I'm more surprised just because I've seen him significantly later in most mock drafts and several of our regular drafts as well. So no issue with the pick. I like going. If you're going to go tight end early, you've got to get one of the top 3, specifically the top 2, Kelsey, Waller, and then obviously Kittle coming in after that. So excited to take him in the early rounds if you get the opportunity, but I would probably wait a little longer than the 205.
Rainbow chimes in the chat and says he would if he had the 101 and a 6-point passing touchdown, he's going Mahomes, and I respect that wholeheartedly. Here, I don't like Mixon, where this is a position where I would normally go running back, so I'm going to take Calvin Ridley, who's a guy that I feel has the potential to be the wide receiver 1 this year. He's going to, with no Julio across from him, obviously, Kyle Pitts is going to take some of those targets away, but we saw what Ridley was capable of last year, and I'm ready for him to take off this year.
Yes, and then we see Justin Jefferson go after you, which is actually who I thought was going to fall to me there, which makes this pick a little bit more difficult for me. That being said, I did take Kamara at the 103. I don't think I even mentioned it after I made the pick, it was a little bit contentious with me when I was thinking about what I was going to do at this position, especially in the 6-point touchdown for quarterbacks. But happy to take Kamara. He's still going to be great. Doesn't matter that Breeze is gone. He's still going to be the guy there, especially with Michael Thomas gone at the beginning of the season. So for me, what I expected for this to happen was I would end up in a position where I'm looking at receiver here because the running backs are obviously not, in my opinion, as high a tier as the receivers that you can grab here. Or I could go quarterback in 6-point, but happy to go with a wide receiver. I haven't had Metcalf fall to me in a single mock draft, so just for the purposes of this one, I'm going to go Metcalf here rather than A.J. Brown, which is who I've seen fall to me pretty exclusively at this position. I haven't seen Metcalf ever make it to the 210, so adding the human element, again, this is different. I'm excited. If he does drop to me at the 210, I probably will take Metcalf because I think he's going to be incredible this year. But it could be A.J. Brown as well. I don't love Mixon as much as some other people do, so I probably wouldn't be looking at Mixon there.
I get the argument, like the volume's going to be there if he's healthy. I just have, obviously the injury, he missed a lot of time last year, so that's a little bit of a concern. But it's also just that offensive line still isn't good. Like there was just no improvement really made at the offensive line position, which to me, it's a cause for concern for him for sure. There's a reason he's been kind of held back from his potential for a few years, and a lot of that has been the offensive line. So to see that not addressed, I'm still definitely a little worried about it. But I also get the argument of getting a workhorse back at 211. Like that's hard to.
Yeah, I get
it's
it.
hard to beat.
I do. I've been kind of stiff-arming Mixon, really any Cincinnati offensive player this year because they didn't look good.
Yeah.
They didn't have Burrow throughout really the preseason, but they just didn't look good. So I was going to take Kittle here if he fell to me at 303. He did not, which is fine with me. The big thing, though, is that what I need to do here is either take a really good receiver since there are still several options on the board or go running back here and get my second running back out of the way. The problem being I don't like where I would be sitting with running backs later than this, but I also don't love this tier. And I think the wide receiver tier is still going to be better. So if it falls to me like this, I'm going to go Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
100% every time. There's just no way that I can't. Keenan Allen is going to be the guy again in the Chargers. We saw Herbert love him last year. Herbert's going to love him again this year. He's going to be a target monster, and especially in PPR. So I'm excited to take Keenan Allen at 303 if he falls to me.
And then Kyle Pitts goes right after you. Some people might see that as a reach. I don't. Kyle Pitts is immediately in line for 100-plus targets from the tight end position. It's hard to pass that up in any capacity. For me here, I'm going to take DeAndre Swift. I have zero concerns about the injury early on in the season. The injury isn't the concern at this point. What the coaches have discussed is his conditioning there. And I don't see any reason to worry about that. he's still going to be in line for a lot of touches. Jamal Williams isn't anything special at the running back position. The backup past them is Jamar Jefferson. Like, there's just no competition. Swift is clearly the most talented player probably in that entire offense. And I'm going to take him. If he falls to me in the middle of the third, anytime, I'm going to draft him.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If it's a choice for me, like early in the third between Keenan Allen and DeAndre Swift, I'm still going to go Keenan Allen. But I don't think in your position I would do anything different. I'd probably go Swift there too.
Yeah, it's again, this tier of running backs, like, you're chasing upside a little bit, and I think Swift has the highest upside of any running back in this tier. If we're gonna draft a guy like Saquon Barkley in the 1-6, who's coming off a much worse injury, has noticeably different looking, like his leg that was hurt is not as big as his leg that was not hurt. Like, these are very noticeable things, like legitimate concerns. I do think he's a freak of nature, and it probably won't affect him whatsoever. But if we're gonna draft Saquon in the 106 and knowing he may see a reduced workload for the first 2, 3, 4 games, Swift, even if he has a reduced workload for week 1, immediately becomes the guy in the offense. Like, it's just not a concern to me. Josh Jacobs goes as Ryan's auto pick. Don't hate it. It's a little early for me. In a recent draft, I got him in the 6th round, which kind of felt like a steal to me, even though I don't love Jacobs' upside in PPR leagues. Followed by CeeDee Lamb, Allen Robinson. I would have taken A-Rob over Lamb, but, Lobo's going to do what he's going to do. I respect the play there.
Yeah. And then looking a little bit later on, so we see now, starting at the 4th, we get James Robinson off the board. I think the 4th is a great value for Robinson, given the ETN injury.
Yeah.
I would have taken him if he would have fallen all the way to me for sure. I didn't expect that to happen. And then Cooper after that. So 96 is going for the big wide receiver stack here. Don't blame him, especially since this is a 2 wide receiver slot, 1 flex. I believe is the league that we're in. I could be wrong. It could be 2 flex. But either way, I don't mind going for the receiver stack, especially with the tier of running back that's available. I think I'll be curious to see what he does later in the draft from a running back perspective and who he's going to pick up as a second starting running back. But I don't mind, given what he had available, taking the Amari Cooper pick there.
I don't mind the Cooper pick. I think Cooper probably still is the wide receiver 1 in that offense this year. The Mike Evans pick is the one that I don't agree with. I think Mike Evans' ADP is way too high, personally. His only reason for scoring as well as he did last year was touchdowns, and we know touchdowns aren't sticky. Yes, he's scored he's had 1,000 yards in each of the last 7 seasons.
Yeah.
But he's got more target competition than he's ever had. He's got a lot of they could limit his workload some this year just because he has had some injuries here and there. I don't know.
The consistency piece. Like, he is able to play. He's not injured that often. He has a good track record of yardage, like you said. So I think it depends on what other wide receivers you have. So if I had like a questionable wide receiver that I took as my wide receiver 1, maybe I wouldn't go Evans. But if I have 2 solid receivers like he does now with Cooper and Hill, I still like Evans being in his flex position. That's a great pick, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
It could have been worse if he didn't get another solid receiver in the 4th, but
we see a couple quarterbacks come off the round here in the 4th with Kyler and Josh Allen. We also see Julio, David Montgomery, Javonte Williams, maybe a bit of a reach, could turn out to be that he's the starter. Given that they rested him in the last preseason game, I'm kind of leaning towards that being the case.
Yeah, I still don't think he's going to take the start in game 1, but I do think that they are going to start him with a workload in game 1, whether that be, I don't know what percentage of the snaps that looks like. But that being said, I think he takes over as the number 1 quickly in that offense, and so things might be shaky for the first week or 2 if you're going to have him as your second starting running back. But that being said, over the course of the season, I wouldn't be concerned.
I went Robert Woods with my pick personally. It was between him and Godwin. It was really close for me. The reason I lean Woods is little less competition for targets, in my opinion. Obviously he's got Cooper Kupp that he has to deal with, but past that, you're looking at Tutu Atwell, Van Jefferson, like, just not the same tier of wide receivers, in my opinion, as you have with Mike Evans, Godwin, and Antonio Brown. Yes, Antonio Brown's been kind of all over the place for the last couple of years, but we're also talking about a guy who was the best wide receiver in football for like 9 straight seasons. So you still have to respect that talent there, whereas some of these other guys you can fade a little bit. But I think Woods is the clear one in that offense, and he's going to play the role that Matt Stafford's going to take advantage of.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Herbert off the board after you. Love the pick. I would have waited maybe another round for quarterback. That's fine. I think Herbert, Murray, and Allen all coming off the board is going to be great for a 6-point touchdown league. And then I took Henderson at the 10. It was tough for me to go Henderson over Godwin but we are really closely approaching the point where I'm going to hate running backs.
Yeah.
And I don't want to risk it too much longer. I'd like to have at least somebody that I know is going to have the majority of the carries on an offense without too much competition in my second running back slot. So I'll happily take Anderson here and hope that he can stay healthy and play through the season.
Yeah, definitely can't knock that pick at all. I probably would have leaned Godwin and just taken a flyer on some of the running backs, but also, you know how I feel. Wide receiver is such a deep position that you can you can get away with avoiding it a little bit.
That's how I am too. Like, I know I can still get receivers that I love in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. And I'm not going to be able to do the same thing with running back, so I don't want to wait longer than I already did.
Definitely. After you, Chris Godwin came off the board on the next pick. Makes a lot of sense. Those are the same guys in the tier there. Cooper Kupp, there's a world where he outscores Robert Woods this year, so I definitely get the attraction to him there. DJ Moore coming off the board right after. That is a quite a crowded wide receiver room there in Carolina, but DJ Moore is the traditional one in that offense, so makes a lot of sense. Tyler Lockett, a big boom bust play. We're talking about a guy who's got 50, 60 point upside depending on your scoring settings in some leagues. So can't knock him coming off the board there whatsoever. It's come back around to you. Where are we leaning here? This is probably where you're looking quarterback, I would assume.
It is. That's exactly what I was just looking at. I'm looking at the quarterback roster in a 6-point scoring league. I do like Lamar in a traditional scoring league, but he's not my number one look when it comes to a 6-point touchdown throw. But I also think Mark Andrews won't slip too much farther. So looking tight end here a little bit, but at the same time, I'm going to go with my boy Dak Prescott here. I think he's going to throw a lot this year. And especially with the upside of the 6-point touchdown, I'm not going to miss out on an opportunity to take Dak here.
There's a world where that that defense is so bad that Dak breaks every passing record if he's healthy.
Yes.
And we are talking about one of, in my opinion, the deepest wide receiver rooms in football. He's got a ton of talent to throw to, and that's not even talking about the fact that you have 2 competent tight ends in Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz.
Dalton Schultz.
And then you have Zeke in the backfield as well, with Tony Pollard being able to come in the spell back. We're talking about an extremely talented offense, so it's definitely a great spot to be. I like Lamar a lot more than most. Lamar's been my quarterback 2 for kind of this whole year, and that's exactly where I'm going with this pick as well. Even with the 6-point passing touchdowns, I think Lamar's going to throw more this year, but his running is also going to be so effective. Obviously, there's a big hit with Bateman going on the IR today. He's going to miss the first 6 weeks of the season, but I'm still going to rock Lamar here. I feel like with the injuries in that wide receiver room, there is a chance that he runs a lot more to start the year, and I think that kind of balances out some of the limited passing upside that he has.
Yeah, after you, we see Thielen come off the board and Ayuk. Not surprised to see those guys going in the 5th round. That's pretty much where I see them all the time. I like Ayuk more than I like Thielen. I don't know that I love Thielen this year at all. I think Jefferson's going to hog his percentage of the targets. Thielen will still get his, but I don't know. I don't love the upside of the rapidly aging Thielen, and I would rather take the younger upside of Ayuk, especially if Trey Lance ends up starting on that offense. I'd be excited to see Ayuk. So I would probably have flipped the pick there, but no big deal. That's just my opinion. And then seeing Davis come off the board is no surprise. We're going to see probably the last tier of running backs going away here as far as starters go, and looking a lot more towards backups being available on the board.
Yeah, with Mike Davis, Gus, and Kareem Hunt coming off the board there, we're really getting a little thin on the running back position, and this is where you start to have to chase, a little bit of upside with the running backs or the pass catcher in a backfield. And this is why I like to attack running back early. Traditionally, is you're hitting the 6th round. I look at some of these wide receivers that are on the board. Michael Thomas isn't here traditionally, but you have a Jamar Chase, you have a Deontay Johnson, you have Juju, you have Devonta Smith, Chase Claypool. There's guys with wide receiver 1 upside, and there's no running backs with upside here. Not running back 1 upside, I should say. So it just feels like the tier drop off is so big here that's traditionally why I prefer a robust running back approach.
I was really curious what we were going to see coming off the board for the 96's team at the 11 position. So Gus Edwards, I love the pick now. In the 5th round, as far as somebody that's going to take a majority of the workload, still being available late in the 5th, Gus Edwards is the best you're going to get, because he is now, with J.K. Dobbins being out for the season, going to take a significant upgrade in terms of the number of running opportunities he's going to get on that offense. And so I like Gus. I think, obviously, I'm not taking Gus as a number one running back or trying to take him early in the second or third round, but I think the fifth round is probably a comfortable place to take Gus.
Yeah, I would agree there. He, like you said, he's going to see a lot of the touches there, and there's been backs who have been released or waived or cut at this point, and we haven't seen anybody brought into that team. So it leads me to believe that they trust Gus Edwards, Tyson Williams, or is it Tyson or Tyron Williams? I want to say Tyson Williams, and Justice Hill enough to be kind of like their three-headed beast. I mean, obviously your running back one in that offense is Lamar, but we'll see how it ends up. But after him comes Kareem Hunt, Jamar Chase, Russell Wilson, Kenny Galladay. Rodgers is a great pick, especially with 6-point touchdowns. If he has another year like he did last year, he's going to be the QB1 in this format.
I think Wilson is too.
Oh, yeah.
Wilson in a 6-point touchdown league can do great things, so I'm not surprised to see Wilson go off the board in the 6th either.
We have Mark Andrews coming off for Aiden's pick. Lobo just has to go and snipe me for Deontay. It's like the third draft in a week that I've got.
I will say, dude, I think Mark Andrews falling to the 6th is a bargain. And people don't love Mark Andrews. I get that.
I'm in that camp.
But as far as outside the top 3 tight ends, getting him in the 6th, you're not going to get better, especially with Hawkinson already being off the board. I don't love Fant this year. I don't love the Denver offense this year. Outside of really Sutton and Judy. So I don't really like any of the other options on that offense too much. And then Goddard I don't love either. And then everything after that I'm not excited for, and I'm taking like maybe 10th round. So Andrews in the 6th I think is still a bargain.
Yeah, I don't love Mark Andrews. I've made that very clear. Like, I think there's another tight end who's currently on the board who I would take over Mark Andrews in most situations. And I'll just leave it at that. Not that Mark Andrews isn't a talented player. I just think the offense is geared away from him in a sense. Obviously, with the wide receivers being hurt early in the season, I think that opens up a door for Mark Andrews to be very productive still. But I just think his ceiling is capped more so than some of the other tight end options that are out there. But I'm never going to knock that pick, especially when you already have Waller. Like, you're taking advantage of a positional premium where you don't like other draft picks at the same spot. So I definitely understand the reasoning behind it. I had a league where I had Waller and Kittle on the same roster, even though it was the year Kittle was hurt, for most of the year. It still worked in my favor. For my pick, I went with Juju. I think Juju is perpetually underrated. He's not going to be, the guy that he was across from AB. But we're talking about, I'll pull up his player card here last year. We're talking about the wide receiver 17 in PPR last year. Like, if you look at what he did in these games, like 25 points, 11 points, 16 points. He had a couple, bad weeks early on, but then he rattled off 17, 13, 21, 22, a bad week, and then every other week. But he was consistently a pretty high scorer, all things considered, and I think that's not really realized by a lot of people who looked at Chase Claypool and a Deontay. Like, not all of them are going to be able to eat every single week, but given the other guys right here, I'll take Juju, and I'll take the almost guaranteed volume from Big Ben.
The reason that I wouldn't go Juju is because I think you can get Chase Claypool later, and I think the upside of Claypool is huge this year. So I think you can get a better value if you wait a round or two and try to take Claypool, and I'm not as excited for Juju. Yeah. What I am disappointed in is I decided to make the Judy pick. Like I just said, only things that I'm interested in Denver is Judy and Sutton. So I'll take Judy here. I think he's got the better upside, and I like Judy in the 6th. After me, Tom Brady. What I don't like is Mostert Edmonds going right after that, because I was going to try to look at one of those guys as my third running back to keep on the bench. But now they're gone off the board too, so that'll make me pivot in a different direction for sure.
Yeah, when you have a team like RotoBurner has there, when you have that wide receiver room and you haven't picked a running back in a while, you see him falling off the board. You're talking about two guys who are on paper the starters in their offense, even if they don't necessarily hold that role the entire year. Like if Mostert gets hurt, Trey Sermon or Elijah Mitchell takes over depending on the room and who's hurt and whatnot. Chase Edmonds, James Conner is going to play a role in that offense all year and could legitimately be the starter, and Edmond could be, relegated to a third down back role. But on paper right now, those are the two starters in the offense. They do have pretty decent upside. Mostert's been consistently the fastest or second fastest player in football. When you have that kind of speed, you're going to always have a role on your team. So I definitely agree with targeting the upside there. And then Cortland Sutton comes off the board at the 7-2. I think this Denver team is going to surprise a lot of people this year, and I will leave it at that. Roto said in the sleeper chat that James Conner and all year in the same sentence made him laugh. Hey, I agree. Me too. But it is a legitimate possibility that if he stays healthy for the whole year, the big if, then there's a role that he will play in that offense. But otherwise, Edmonds has proven to be effective. So we'll see how that
I like
goes.
Edmonds. I do. I like the pick. I like Edmonds. So I have no issues there, especially when he already has the McCaffrey at the 101. So
yeah,
and he can flex too. Like if somehow Connor is healthy and can maintain the role, I think Mostert is going to be a good starting running back in the RB2 position for him as well.
Edmonds is discount Eckler, he says. It's definitely a possibility.
That's true. That could be true, I should say. But I also do like taking Trace Sermon. I don't know if I would take him in the 7th, but Mostert does show that he has had several injuries, and so I like the idea of taking Sermon, knowing that he probably will have a role this year, and he's shown that he can be a very talented back as well.
Yeah. Again, Trey Sermon, a guy that I was not in on, to say the least, starting the year. I've definitely, turned a big corner with that guy. But it'll be interesting to see how that entire offense plays out. Sermon's a guy they could be splitting carries for the entire year, him and Mostert, to try and keep Mostert healthy. It's, it remains to be seen how that's going to play out. But I think, those running backs are good pieces to have. Myself went Noah Fant. Noah Fant's who I was talking about, preferring over Mark Andrews. His athletic upside cannot be discounted whatsoever, and as long as he can stay healthy, he's just as good of an offensive player as any tight end in football. From a metric perspective, like his speed, his explosiveness, everything like that. The health has been the concern with him, and poor quarterback play, let's be honest, with Drew Lock.
The big thing for me, dude, is I would have taken Fant at the 7-3 if it wasn't for the fact that I already had Judy. I'm not going to double down on the offensive weapons in Denver, but I think in the 7th, I would still take Fant, even though I don't love Fant.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's kind of a drop-off. There's him, and there's maybe one other guy who I think have that kind of, with tight ends, we shouldn't even call it like tight end ones. Like we should really be talking about it in like tight end half. Like there's 6 tight ends that'll produce, and then everybody else, like you're throwing a dart on who scores a touchdown that week. And I am starting to come around on the advantage of having a decent tight end. There is one other guy who I'm hoping to target later on in the draft. I hope he falls down boards a little bit. But I think I like his upside a lot in his current offense. But there's not a lot of talent, and you have to kind of attack it where you see it.
Yeah, I don't blame you, dude. After Fant off the board, we have Chark, who I don't love this year at all. I don't love Jacksonville at all. Chark doesn't really excite me, but in the 7th again as your 4th wide receiver, and it's also an auto pick. It is what it is. Stafford, I am very interested in Stafford on the Rams this year, so I think he's a good value to take if you're looking for the quarterback position with a 6-point. Robbie Anderson, Damian Harris, Deebo Samuel, Melvin Gordon, Jalen Waddle, Corey Davis off the board.
Corey Davis is a league winner. You heard it here. He is going to feast in that offense. He's going to be the main target for Zach Wilson all year long, and he's a steal at his draft position. Yeah, even Corey this Davis league where he was arguably reached for, I think, by traditional ADP a little bit, but he's going to play such an intricate role in that offense, and that offense I think is going to run through him a lot more than people realize.
Yep,
that running back room isn't good.
No.
That running back room is a bunch of guys who are very meh, and you're kind of praying that one of them pops off any given week. So, like, they're decent best ball options, especially at their ADPs, now that Michael Carter's ADP has come back down to earth a little bit.
Yes.
But, Corey Davis is that dude.
Dude, I actually really like Corey Davis, too, and you and I both agree on this. The big thing is that from a normal, like a non-fantasy interested in football mock draft perspective, right? Like, we've got a lot of smart football dudes in this mock draft. But Corey Davis, for most people, he's so low on ADP that if you don't follow football closely enough and you're not paying attention to the preseason, Corey Davis is going to fall late on draft boards.
I've gotten him in like the 14th round.
Yes, I have gotten him significantly later than this several times in drafts, looking maybe even into the, like you said, the 12th, 13th, and later rounds. So I think this is a great position, probably where he should be in people's ADP. but he's not. So I'm not upset at all seeing him go off the board in the 8th, other than the fact that I didn't get him myself. So love the pick there. Off the board after him is Jarvis Landry, Tyler Boyd, and Brandon Cooks. No surprise there, too. Getting kind of into your bench stash receivers that are going to have upside on your bye weeks. So, like all of those guys, other than maybe Cooks, he's still going to be really one of the only weapons they have. But I hate the Houston offense this year, so I'm stiff-arming them pretty hard.
Yeah, while that's the case, Brandon Cooks is the guy who just produces. Like, he's been a consistent wide receiver, too, in his whole career. Sorry, had a sneeze coming in there. Couldn't finish that thought. But yeah, like with Cooks, he's going to be the number one in his offense, and he's always produced no matter where he's been. And I think you can't discount that. And at his value, like you're not drafting him to be a wide receiver 2, but he very likely is going to finish the season as a wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think he's got a lot of upside still, too. I just, again, dude, it's just that offense looks so bad. That team looks so bad that it's hard for me to get excited. I probably would take a couple other options that I saw on the board before him, and I'm still hoping some of them fall to me. So we'll see what happens here, and I will let you know in a second.
I took Will Fuller. I like his upside more than a lot of the people at this position. And like LaVisca, who went right after him, I think he's just competing for, like, he's going to be used in such a weird role, like a modified Percy Harvin role, back from Urban Meyer's old offensive approach. But, like, I don't know. I just don't see him. Like, Will Fuller could legitimately be the target hog in that offense after he has his 1-game suspension, whereas I don't think Chenault's ever going to reach, like, that same capacity when it comes to, like, being his team's wide receiver 1. Like, while Jalen Waddle, like, if he's healthy, is going to be very productive, but I think they're going to use him more around the field, kind of like Chenault, as opposed to just traditionally as, like, a true wide receiver 1.
The great thing for me is that you took Fuller, who was one of the guys I was considering. Chenault, I was not, which left the one that I was on the board, which is Michael Pittman.
You love Michael Pittman.
I do love Michael Pittman, and I especially love Michael Pittman going into this year with the change at quarterback, and I think that Michael Pittman is going to have a lot of opportunity. I think he is easily going to be the number 1 wide receiver on this offense, especially now that T.Y. Hilton's out. Even though I fucking hated T.Y. Hilton anyway, he was a distraction and an opportunity to just take targets away. And now that he's gone, at least for the beginning of the season, I think Pittman's going to get a chance to show out, and I like his upside this year, coming into year 2 of his NFL career. So I'm excited for Pittman, and I will happily take him in the 8th.
Yeah, I don't love Michael Pittman. His prospect profile isn't phenomenal by any means. Obviously, is the upside of being, potentially the main guy in that offense, outside of Jonathan Taylor. Right. I don't know. I just don't. To me, like 8th round just feels too early for him, if that makes sense. Like, I definitely understand him being in that position, but it's just one of those spots where it's just like I have a hard time making that pick. Rainbow points out here he also loves Pittman. He has him in one of the dynasty leagues that we're in, and I think dynasty he's a better play than in redraft. I definitely see the appeal there. So
I mean, like, look at it from the perspective here, though. Like, you look at what else is going around him at this tier, and I've already filled the starting position in almost every category. I have 4 other receivers that I can trust. So Pittman really is a bench stash for me in this redraft. And if he shows out, great. If he hasn't by week 2 or 3, or as T.Y. Hilton maybe rolls back in, I can just drop him. Let somebody else pick him up off the waivers or make a trade. So I'm happy to stash Pittman in the hopes of the upside there.
For sure. Leonard Fournette comes off the board after him. I don't get the Leonard Fournette hype. Like, Rojo is clearly a superior player in every single way. I'm glad that Rojo went in front of Fournette in this draft. But Fournette, if Rojo goes down, we've seen Fournette be a 1,000-yard rusher who scores a handful of touchdowns, and he's going to be on one of the best offenses in football, so I can't knock the pick too much. Roto comes in at the 8-12 and snags my next pick target. I wanted to take Tannehill here. Tannehill is a guy who's going to finish as a top 8 quarterback in most, in 6 points passing touchdown even, because we're talking about an offense that has AJ Brown and Julio Jones. Like, 2 guys who legitimately could finish as the wide receiver 1 on the same offense with an improved quarterback, with an offensive line that's healthier than last year when we saw Tannehill show out. Like, I love Tannehill this year. He's probably the most underrated quarterback in fantasy right now.
For me, there's no way I can not like take this next pick at the 9th round. I'm gonna take Dallas Goedert.
Yep.
I need a tight end. I don't love Goddard, but if I can get him in the 9th, I'm gonna take him. Honestly, there's no way I'm gonna skip out on that pick. I think in terms of the tiers across the board, I'm happy to take almost any wide receiver that's sitting in the tier that we're looking at right now, but I'm not going to get another opportunity to get a potentially great Dallas Goedert or a tight end like Dallas Goedert. I think some people are worried about Ertz still being around. I'm not. I think Goddard's still going to be the tight end on that offense. You might see Ertz steal a few of those opportunities, but really I think Philadelphia is looking for somebody that will just take Ertz, so they might let him shine early and then try to flip him for the upside if they can get him to show out in the first few games.
Yeah, Goddard was he's definitely an underappreciated tight end, and especially in dynasty formats, like we're talking about a guy who's like 24, 25. Like Zach Ertz isn't going to play that much longer. Yeah. He's 31. He's just aging, and we've seen the effects of that aging hurt him already. So I don't know. It's a guy that in redraft, I'm hesitant, but I get the upside that he does have in that offense.
I do hate that Farheezy's on auto draft and took my next potential pick if he managed somehow to fall all the way back to me, because I do love Darnell Mooney as well. And I am happily taking him late in almost every draft right now, and people are kind of, I think, underestimating his potential as well. And like you said, kind of similar to Goddard, I think in the dynasty format, Mooney is an absolute must draft. Redraft, maybe not as much, but I'm still excited for his upside, especially when Fields takes over and starts slinging the ball around. So I will happily take Mooney, but that's fine. He went off the board right after me, so no big deal there. I'll still be happy with my Goddard pick.
And we are starting to get the point in the draft where pretty much everybody is a little bit of a reach, in my opinion. So I'm gonna take a guy that I don't love this pick here, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to take James Conner. He's my third running back, so he gives me a little bit of depth here, and I think he has the potential to have a bigger role than a lot of the guys that are kind of in that position here. And just with, running backs being a shallower position, like I'll take the upside here later as opposed to some other options.
In the 9th round, James Conner has the opportunity to do things.
Roto pointed out as well that he has Ryan Tannehill stacked with A.J. Brown. So that's going to be, if they have a good game together, he's just going to wipe those matchups easily.
That is a common draft strategy across almost every format, is looking for quarterback wide receiver stacks. Obviously, if they don't hit, it sucks, but when they do, it's huge, and it can be league winning. So
I do it a lot in definitely. I do it a lot in best ball formats where I'm not setting a lineup every week just because I don't have to try and predict like a big game for some people. But yeah, it's a great strategy, and it can work out really well for people. Especially when you have like the Mahomes-Kelsey stack. That is format proof. Like that stack is just always going to be good. Or if you have like the Mahomes-Hill stack, that's always going to be a good one. If you can stack like Russ with DK or Lockett, that's always a good stack to have as well. If you pull off the DVA Rodgers stack like Nubs did, that's just it's going to be massive. You're going to have such an advantage.
There's things that I don't love about Rainbow's picks here throughout the draft, but I think, like you said, the Mahomes and Kelsey stack is going to be enough to carry the weight of a lot of these other gaps in his team. Specifically at the running back core, I think Sanders I'm low on. Most people aren't. And then James Robinson, I think, is going to have the opportunity, but it's still a weak area for him given the running backs that he has. But the Kelsey and Mahomes stack, I think, will make up for that.
I mean, you have to consider too, though. Kareem Hunt, I'll pull up his player card here again. He was running back 10 last year. Like the man, he's not gonna be a guy who blows your socks off. He's not gonna be a guy who comes out and drops like 30 some points. But like the man has consistently still played a very big role in that Stefanski offense, and he's going to continue to do so. Like I'm not worried if Kareem Hunt's my second or third running back there. Like he doesn't, like Rainbow doesn't have necessarily the same upside that I think some of these other offenses do with his running backs, but he's got a very solid floor. And that's when you attack,
you're right.
When you wait on running backs like that, floor is fine, especially with these wide receivers. Like you're chasing upside with Waddle, you're chasing upside with Chase.
Yep.
Corey Davis, I think, is a safer floor than either of those guys. So it's like his team in theory isn't the best. I wouldn't be surprised to see a team built like that in the championship of a league.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And then let's see, where were we? So Connor off the board, Gronkowski, Gallup, Drake, Thomas, which I think is a value in the ninth. People underestimate his value in Washington this year. And then Hurts, which I do love as a late round quarterback. Gesicki, Moss, Fields in the 10th as a backup quarterback to Mahomes. I think that's a great option that gives you the time to let Mahomes ball out. And by the time his bye week comes out, hopefully Fields is in the starting position, which I don't doubt that he will be. And then we see Higbee in the 10th. The 2 tight end stack's a little weird there, but I love Higbee, and I love Higbee in the 10th, which is where I see him go a lot. Jake doesn't think
I hate Tyler Higbee.
And that's fine, but I like Higbee.
Tyler Higbee is a great football tight end. He's not a good fantasy tight end. Lobo, get out of my head. He snipes I hate drafting with him because him and I are on the same page with so many players that he's sniped me like on 3 different picks at this point. So I'm very mad at you. Stop it, Lobo.
The pick that he got sniped on was Johnny Smith, which I think is great. The concern for me, which is why I just traded for Higbee in our one of our dynasty leagues, is that I don't love the fact that they also have Hunter Henry on there. And I know they'll run 2 tight end sets, but I think that there's going to be some target sharing there, and I don't love that.
Where I think Jonnu is kind of, I don't want to say immune to that, but a little bit immune to it, is that he's a yards after catch monster, so he's going to be used in a much different way than Hunter Henry is, where Hunter Henry is going to be used as a more traditional tight end. We're going to see Jonnu Smith line up in the backfield. We're going to see Jonnu Smith lined up wide. We're going to see him lined up in the slot, and he's going to play a bigger role than I think a lot of people realize. Rainbow points out here as well, limiting risk while you have upside is huge, and I agree 1,000%. If you're chasing upside with a lot of positions, you need some of those safer floor guys to kind of balance those out.
100%.
It makes your team so much more consistent, and it balances out what your team can do a lot more.
Yep, I don't disagree at all.
After me, Ryan's team auto picked Trevor Lawrence there, which I don't hate, especially in that point in the draft. I went with Elijah Moore, again, chasing upside a little bit. Like, we're talking about a guy who I think Corey Davis ultimately leads that team in targets, but there's the potential for Elijah Moore there to see 7, 8, 9, 10 targets a game. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. He's better than Jamison Crowder, and I don't think Crowder plays the role that people think he's going to play this year.
Yep, and then between those picks, we saw Carter, Marquise Brown, Ruggs, and that's it come off the board, other than the ones we already talked about. Marvin Jones for the auto pick for Farheezy, and then...
He was my next target.
My next target, which I'm so glad he fell to me, because I love taking the shot here in the 10th round, especially for the impending bye week and or potential of injury. I'm going to take Trey Lance here and give him the shot in the 10th. I love Trey Lance if he becomes the starter, and I think that he has shown that he is ready to be, and I think that the 49ers will come around before too long in the season and give him the opportunity. So I'm happy to stash him on the bench in case either Dak gets injured or when Dak has the bye.
I hate you. I hate you so much. I was going to do it. I was just going to stick with my rushing quarterback upside and just call it a day, but you just had to go and do it to me.
I didn't even want to say a word about it, not even a little bit of what I was thinking about doing there, because I had a feling he would fly off the board if I even mentioned it, so I'm glad he made it to me. When I saw Fields go in the 10th, I was a little bit surprised, honestly, that it wasn't Lance, but I do understand the pick there, too, so I'm not going to discredit that pick at all. I think if either of them fell to me, I would take the chance at them at this point and put him on the bench and let it ride out.
I think I think Fields has a quicker path to starting than Lance does.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's hard to... God damn it, Roto.
Oh, yeah, that's a good pick.
That's
Marquez
who I was...
Callaway has been somebody that I've been able to pick up almost as consistently as any other pick that I've had in like the 14th, 15th round. So
yeah,
I was holding out a while to even look at him, but I love the pick there. I was also hoping... with his pick there too, that Sony Michel would fall a little bit later, so I could grab him late because I have some faith that he's going to do good things this year and demand some of those targets as well. So for me to get a backup running back, I think I might have to start thinking about doing it now, which I will, and I'll go ahead and take Singletary.
Kind of figured you were going to go there on me. Yes, Roto points out in our sleeper chat that damn it, Roto is one of the best things you can hear in a draft. Just replace your name with Roto with your name in any format. And yes, that's one of the best feelings you can ever have. If Lobo was watching the podcast right now, I don't know if he is or not, he would hear his name a lot too. And he would know that I'm very upset with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's going to get a strongly worded tweet from me one of these days. Again, what you're talking about here, you kind of are still looking at some depth pieces and kind of guys that you're going to have to kind of hope play a role.
Yep.
I'm going to take Phillip Lindsey here. We've kind of talked about it on last week's podcast. I think his upside in that offense is he's a better pass catcher than Mark Ingram, and I don't think that they trust David Johnson to continue being that role. I could be totally off base with that, but in the 11th round, you're kind of just hoping for a guy that maybe lucks into something anyway.
Yeah,
so
dude, we're in the late rounds, man. Now, so you're truly looking. You're not hoping. You're not grabbing your starters here, other than maybe a defense or a kicker, right? So like you're looking right now at the potential for upside that you're going to stash, right? So anything that could potentially turn out to be a great fill-in for you on the bye weeks or pending an injury, and I think Phillip Lindsey is a great option there. And I think I almost picked him up in our redraft league off the waiver wires until Sony Michel got signed, and I ended up dropping David Johnson for him instead, and so I'm happy with that as well. And I think you get a great pick with Phillip Lindsey in the 11th.
Rainbow points out that the Fields pick for him is as much a homer pick, being a Bears fan and living in the area, as anything. That's maybe part of my love for Justin Fields as well, but I also, before he was a Bear, I was screaming the upside of Justin Fields, living in the Chicagoland area as well.
Dude, we saw it. You don't need to even talk about potential just out of college anymore. We saw it in the preseason. He played against a few starters on some defenses too, and you still saw Justin Fields look great. So I think the potential for Justin Fields to do great things in the NFL is absolutely there. I just think that the rushing upside to Trey Lance is a little bit higher, which is why I would have picked him instead.
I will agree that the rushing upside is a little higher just because I think his offensive scheme allows for it a little bit more. I think Fields can be the best running quarterback in football, but what makes his talent so special to me is that his brain doesn't say run. His brain says, I'm a quarterback, let me throw this ball. I don't care that I can run a 4.3 40. I'm going to throw this ball 60 yards on a dot, and I'm going to do it in your face, and I'm just going to laugh about it on my way to the bank.
Yeah, if anybody watched our draft or NFL draft episode while we did the podcast, I was excited for you guys, man. I'm really excited that Fields ended up in Chicago. I think it's absolutely insane that happened. I think there are so many mistakes that were made by other teams in the draft, but I think I can't help but be excited for Chicago and what it means for you guys to have Fields on that team. The fact that Andy Dalton is the starter is almost laughable at this point, and I think that it won't last long. But they told him he's their starter, so he'll get at least a week, and then we'll see what happens. But Fields is exciting, and I'm happy for Chicago.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. To kind of catch up on the draft a little bit, after Callaway, we see Sony Michel come off the board. Again, kind of chasing a guy who could luck his way into a starting role at some point this year. David Johnson, makes a lot of sense. Devin Singletary, Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's a great quarterback pick. I know that Farhizi is a bit of a Falcons fan, to say the least. But, again, 6-point passing touchdowns, a lot of upside there. After me comes Curtis Samuel, Tony Pollard, Nyheim Hines, Jacoby Myers, who nub sniped from me. I'm realizing that I'm remembering now that everybody can see my queue if they're watching the stream, and I've now had 2 different players that I added to my queue picked almost immediately afterward, which is a little weird, but you then have Aguilar come off the board. That New England team, their pass catchers get such a boost from Mac being the starter there.
That's incredible. I mean, we haven't even talked about that news at all in the podcast yet, but the fact that they released Cam and started Mac Jones is incredible for the team, I think, and it's also it's going to be great for some of those weapons as well.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. It makes our bet a lot more interesting, as you kind of texted me almost 100%. Immediately after I told you.
If you don't know, Jake and I have a bet standing about who does better in the 2021 season between Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, so that definitely makes the bet a lot more interesting. We'll see what happens. I'm on the side of Zach Wilson. He's on the side of Mac Jones, so we'll see what happens there. And either way, we're excited to make that bet. We'll try to get a whiteboard together or some sort of tracker available for us in the podcast for our bets that we make throughout the NFL season, but that's definitely one of them. We're excited for it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, we're not going to have to do it on like a per game basis now. We can just look at it straight up.
After Aguilar, we see Cousins come off the board. I like him as a backup quarterback. I still think he is like one of those safety picks that we've been talking about. He's still going to have the offensive weapons, and Minnesota is going to be a good team. So I like that. And also, I don't love Minnesota's defense this year, so I think Kirk Cousins might have to throw a few more passes. So I like him as a bench stash there as a backup quarterback. We see Russell Gage, Rondale Moore, which I hope would have fallen to me. I actually really like Rondale Moore after seeing him in the preseason. I had almost no blip of him on my radar whatsoever going after the draft, but I do really like what I saw in the preseason. So Rondale Moore is great, especially in dynasty formats as a stash, but on the bench in the redraft too. Rashad Penny, and then we see Devontae Parker, Tyrell Williams, Jamal Williams, which is going to be great to pick up if you can in the late rounds, especially for the first couple weeks if you're weak at running back, because he's likely to be the starter at least for week 1. Or at least the lead back for week 1 as Swift is recovering from the injury. Then you see Gabe Davis, Hunter Henry, and Roethlisberger from Jake. So I'll let him talk about that one.
I think Roethlisberger is turning into such a big value at the quarterback position this year. Like, people are ignoring, like, okay, so again, pulling up a player card here. It doesn't show everything. He was quarterback 13. Like, yeah. We can knock him and we can say he's got a noodle arm. We can say this and we can say that. This is a guy who consistently put up performances last year. He had 2 games under 11 points. So those are obviously that low floor is a little concerning. But where I'm taking a quarterback here, especially in 6-point passing touchdown, it's hard to beat.
Yeah, and I think here is actually where you'd see, instead of some of these deep stash players, because of the way that this league is actually formatted that I'm drafting for, we do have a defense and a kicker. So you would have seen a little bit of a mix in here in terms of the draft. And definitely you'd see some of that coming off the board now. But because we're not mock drafting that way, it makes this a little bit more interesting from a position player perspective. And it makes it actually a lot harder for me to make a pick here, especially since I already did get a backup quarterback. And so I was honestly kind of getting lost in the conversation there. And a lot of the picks that I wanted fell off the board. So I am going to go with Mecole Hardman. I don't love it, but I do think Mecole Hardman has the opportunity to show out in the offense this year. He's going to be a deep stash for me. Honestly, I've held him on my bench before in redraft leagues, and he has sat and just consumed a position on my roster. So I don't love it, but he's an easy player now, given the history that I have with him, that I would dump him pretty quickly if he didn't show some opportunity.
Definitely. After Mecole, Joe Burrow finally comes off the board.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense here. Terrace Marshall, again, crowded wide receiver room, but we're talking about he's going to probably play mostly in the slot this year, and he's going to be one of the biggest, most his matchup for slot corners is going to be insane this year. So we could see Terrace Marshall surprise a lot of people. Follows him up with my next tight end target, Gerald Everett. Rashad Bateman comes off the board in the 13th. Given that he has the injury, I think this is a spot that makes a lot of sense. If he was not injured, I think he'd be coming off the board in like the 7th, 8th round.
Yeah, I honestly don't wholeheartedly disagree with that statement, but man, this one is a tough one. Everybody that I love is gone. This is probably where I would just be picking up my kicker/defense in the other league. I'm just going to take the shot here on AJ Green, who I absolutely do not like at all, but I think he has the opportunity in Arizona to catch some passes, so I'll deep stash AJ Green, even though I don't like doing it.
I'm also not going to like my next pick no matter what, so just join the club here. AJ Green, again, it's a guy who could see upside this year.
The crazy thing is AJ Green's fucking 33 years old. How much longer is he going to even be in the NFL? I don't know, but this might be his last potentially relevant year for fantasy football, even though I absolutely hate the pick.
But yeah, again, it's a spot where you're chasing a guy. You're either taking rookies who have no name or old guys who don't have a name anymore.
Yep.
So, you're kind of targeting the same dudes, whether they're old or not. Is kind of your difference. So I don't hate the pick, honestly. I don't love it, but I
definitely don't
hate
love
it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna switch up my next pick. I think from who I was, and never mind. I was gonna pick Amon-Ra instead of the guy that I'm going to pick.
I fucking hate Detroit this year too. If it's not, go ahead.
I think the Detroit offense is a value this year.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it almost as much as Houston.
That being said, I am going to make a pick that I absolutely hate because he's not that good at football,
Yes.
but I'm going to draft Sammy Watkins because he's going to
Yeah.
be the wide receiver 1 while Rashad Bateman's hurt.
Dude, I think if you're not DeAndre Swift, I don't want you. In fantasy.
From the Detroit team?
Yeah.
I'd say Hawkinson too. But like
Okay, yeah, sorry.
you're going to like
Hawkinson too.
you're going to have targets in that offense. Like the team their defense isn't good, so they're going to throw the ball 500 plus times. Like
Yeah.
their wide receivers are going to see just natural volume. And I think Amon-Ra's going to play out of the slot exclusively. Tyrell's going to be the number 1 wide receiver out wide. Like, I don't hate having one of those guys. Where we're picking them, I don't hate it. If that's a guy you're targeting in the 7th or 8th round, you're doing it wrong. But
True.
there's some value there that I think is not being appreciated the way that it should.
Yeah, and that's fair. I don't know. Detroit and Houston are both kind of stiff arms for me unless I get a real value late somehow, which is not likely. Like, if I can get, like you said, TJ Hawkinson in the later rounds, 100%. I don't think it's going to happen anywhere, but I would do it. Other than that, I'm not that interested. That being said, in the 13th fucking round, like, it's a fine pick.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I'd take Hawk over Andrews.
I would too, 100%.
So,
Off the board after Watkins is Murray, Mayfield, Gainwell, and then you've got Bryan Edwards, another receiver that I'm not in love with, but I do see the upside in the 13th potentially. Then you've got Boston Scott, Sterling Shepard, who is... People don't love Sterling Shepard. I don't love Sterling Shepard, but in the 13th round, I can completely understand throwing him on the bench.
you know who does love him? Yahoo's projections.
Yeah.
Yahoo,
Yeah.
in our PPR Yahoo league that I'm in, he's projected at getting like 15 points week 1. I'm like, what?
Ugh. Yeah, I don't think so.
Like, he's projected over Cortland Sutton.
Okay.
Which
hate
makes
that.
no
That
sense to me.
is terrible. Cole Kmet coming off in the 14th round is a great bench stash, I think. Especially if you already have Kelsey and you can maybe throw Kmet in there too. I think he is going to be special over the course of his career potentially. Not like to Kelsey's level whatsoever, but as a bench stash that you can maybe throw in the lineup on a bye week or with an injury like I've talked about with a few other players. I don't hate throwing him there. Cole Beasley has the opportunity, no matter fucking how old and unvaccinated he is, that he could easily catch a lot of passes this year too. So having him on your bench isn't a terrible idea.
He could catch something else, though, if you know what I'm saying.
He sure could.
We have Deshaun Jackson come off the board there. Don't hate it. Could be a decent stash play, especially if you run into some injuries at your other wide receiver positions. Mac Jones comes off the board at Nubs quarterback 2. Again, another thing that I really don't hate. Like, he could play a pretty decent role in that offense. Roto calls him Cold Sneasley. My personal favorite way to refer to him is Les Welker. But, it is what it is. He's a guy who he's got his beliefs and he's sticking to them, which I guess I respect to an extent, but we'll leave that at that.
As a Dallas fan, I respect the game that he has and the fact that he played through the playoffs with like a broken fucking shin or whatever it was.
Was it like his femur or something?
It might have been his femur. I don't know. Something ridiculous. Like, he played through a pretty intense injury. But him as a fucking COVID-idiot right now, I'm just whatever. Like, goddamn it, Beasley. You can die on that hill all you want, but...
So I'm gonna preface this pick I'm about to make in real drafts. If this was a legitimate league that we were doing, I would do the exact same thing that I've done in every redraft league that it's been able for me to do this.
Watson.
Deshaun Watson is who I'm taking with my last pick every single time. If he's
Yeah.
there, if he plays, we're talking about a top 5 quarterback. And if he doesn't play, I'm gonna know by week 2 and he's off my roster.
Yep.
But here, I'm gonna chase the money. I'm going to chase a guy who's got a big contract, even though I don't love him, and the offense that he plays on doesn't play to him. I'm going to take Austin Hooper here as my second tight end. When it comes to tight end, traditionally, if you follow the money, you do pretty okay. And he's
I really
got like
thought
the
you were gonna
fourth
just
or
go with fucking Deshaun Watson, but yeah, I get
no.
what you're doing here.
If you're targeting the money that tight ends are paid traditionally, you do pretty okay. And Hooper's got like the 4th or 5th largest contract of tight ends in football. I'll just target that late. Like,
Yeah, I don't blame you. I hate everything that's available for me right now.
yeah, if I were you picking here, I'd be looking at like Jalen Rieger.
Yeah, I didn't like what I saw last year. I didn't like what I saw in the preseason. That and Devonta Smith is going to be the clear number 1 in that offense.
But I mean, if Rieger plays out of the slot, like it's reported, like he's gonna have a role.
Yeah.
You could go Hayden Hurst here and take a decent
I could go with my
floor.
boy Jamison Crowder, but I'm not gonna do it. I do love Crowder in PPR actually though in past years, but I will just take the Rieger pick. Whatever, I don't care. Like I don't like that at all, but it is fine. That, while Jake is typing back in the chat, is the end of the draft. We saw the final picks, Alexander Madison and Giovanni Bernard, who I considered either of those potentially as my last pick. That being said, thank you for everybody that came to join us in the draft for this mock draft for my birthday. I appreciate you guys all coming out and drafting with us. It was a fun draft, and I am very happy with my final roster, and if this is what I get in my league with my work buddies, that'll be great. So for me, it's quarterback Dak Prescott, followed by Alvin Kamara and Darrell Henderson at running back, DK Metcalf and Keenan Allen starting with as my wide receivers, Dallas Goedert in the tight end slot, and then Jerry Jeudy and Claypool in the flex position. On my bench, I've got Pittman, Hardman, AJ Green, and Rager as my receivers, Devin Singletary, and then Trey Lance as my final bench stash. Love the team, happy with it, and I would be happy with it in an actual league as well.
Yeah, man. Solid draft for you out of the 3 spot. Really no complaints there. Obviously, the sniping is always a complaint. But for me, my team's looking Lamar at my quarterback. Ezekiel Elliott and DeAndre Swift as my top 2 running backs. Calvin Ridley and Robert Woods as my top 2 wide receivers. Noah Fant in the tight end position. My likely starting slots will be Juju Smith-Schuster and Will Fuller. My bench from the running back position, we have James Conner and Phillip Lindsey. Wide receivers, we have Sammy Watkins and Elijah Moore. We have Austin Hooper, and we have our backup quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. So, picking out of the 5 spot, again, really no complaints there. I'd be happy with that team any day of the week. So, it's definitely, definitely appreciate you having everybody on that joined us for tonight's draft. Kyle, I know they all love getting in drafts and being able to hang out with some other people who love the fantasy scene the way that we do. So we thank you. I thank you for being my friend. I thank you for doing this podcast with me, and I wish you nothing but the happiest birthday that I can.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, everybody. This was my request to Jake, was to do a final mock draft for the year leading into the NFL season. I love doing mock drafts. I love also talking with the guys from the community. Like I said, adding the human element into the draft is you can't really beat that. It definitely changes the way that you're seeing the mock drafts and getting prepared for those drafts, the real drafts, that is. So thanks for everybody that joined us. It was a good time. I don't have anything else for the podcast this week, so thanks for joining us. We did it a day early. We will be joining again back with you guys on Thursday next week. But in the meantime, follow us again. Final plug for our social medias. Jake Perry 34, Kyle Anderson, number 2 ABG Husbands, most places, but you can find us anywhere just by looking up 2 Average Husbands.
Please go retweet. Please go retweet the Michelob Ultra tweet. We would love Michelob Ultra to get us some gear that we can wear on the podcast. Kyle, real quick, before I close this out, what do you give the Michelob Ultra?
I knew that was coming, and I was surprised you didn't ask me earlier, but we also do have to rank your beer. So for me, for Michelob Ultra, the big thing, right, is it's my favorite light beer, but that being said, I will give it on the totality of beer scale, a 6.9. I do love Michelob Ultra. It is my number 1 pickup when I go to drink casually, so I have no issues giving it a good rating there. That being said, any sort of stout is probably going to be rated above. Porter's not so much, but I do love a lot of other beer. But Ultra's good too. My number 1 light.
I'm surprised you didn't give it a 10. I had already written down a 10. I had to move that over a column just as the meme rating. I feel like you can.
Can't do it.
Anyways, for myself, for the Nilla Fluffer Nanner Nutter, I gave it a 7.4. I think if it didn't have the banana flavor in there, it would have been like an 8.5. Like, it would have been very good without it. The banana just was kind of weird.
I hate artificial banana flavor.
It doesn't taste artificial. I will give it that. It tastes real. Like, it tastes like banana, but it just doesn't blend well with the stout flavors, in my opinion. Like, kind of that, like, coffee, dark chocolate flavor that you get. It just doesn't blend perfectly for me. But it's still pretty good. 7.4. Nothing to shake a stick at. That's still probably in my top, 15 beers so far on this podcast. So, but thank you all for tuning in. We do appreciate all of the support that we do get. We love you guys coming out in the chat, hanging out. We'll try and,
Absolutely.
As much as we're live pretty much every Thursday this week. Obviously a little bit different. I'm going to be out of town tomorrow, so we had to rock it a day early. But Thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out our socials and give us a follow. Check us out on Spotify and iTunes. And otherwise, we will see you next week.
Peace.